We're back. The next item is Notice of Motion 12.1.3, keeping tabs on City Council. Councillor Farkas.
Thank you, Worship. Is that how you get around the talk back from council? Is you give you now your narrative voice intonations? Anyway. Thank you, Worship, and members of council for your consideration of this notice of motion. This notice of motion, keeping tabs on City Council, is intended to increase City Hall accountability and make it easier for Calgarians to keep tabs on their elected officials. It's fair to say that interest in City Hall is at an all-time high. I, like many of you, imagine that one of the most common questions I get asked is how I voted on an issue and why. While voting information is available in records hidden away on the city website, few people have the time to go through the many thousands of pages and find exactly what they're looking for. I think that we can make things on the whole easier by publishing key votes of mayor and council on the City of Calgary's homepage and including that information with candidate biographies if they run in the 2021 election. I believe, simply put, that there is no reason that Calgarians cannot have the most responsive and transparent local government in Canada. Further to this, I'm proposing that we go even further and provide a transcript of remarks made in council, like as is done at the provincial and federal government. It was interesting for me to learn that we already create a transcript for closed captioning, but that information and details are deleted at the end of a given day or at the end of proceedings. In the long term, I would also like to see an easily searchable database of voting records based on citizens' interest. We've also recently decided to keep more video types of different meeting types and for longer. I believe that given the recent investments that we've made in information technology, as well as the reduced costs of storing information like this, there's no longer a reason that these council meetings be deleted within 2 years' time. So this should be doable at minimal cost or even allow new revenue streams if we're able to tap into advertising revenue from enhancing our social media presence. So I would say that Calgarians deserve to know how they're being represented at City Hall, Your Worship. This motion builds upon past efforts to improve transparency. I think that unlocking the mystery of what happens in the council chambers is one of the best ways that we can include Calgarians in the important work that we do and be held accountable, particularly at election time. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks very much, Councillor Farkas. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Chu, thank you. I'm in the chair. I do have some things to say about it, though. But first, I'll go to Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you. I actually have several questions for our clerks.
Yes.
So, were you consulted with this motion?
No, I wasn't.
There was no dialogue or consultation at all on this motion?
About a year ago, Councillor Farkas asked me about the Hansard, and I said I was not able to do a Hansard because I cannot create any record that has any sort of commentary. All I can do is record the minutes, and the minutes must be approved by the presiding officer, being the mayor and the council, in the case of council, and the presiding clerk.
Okay. I'm completely for transparency, but I need to understand what direction this goes, because I'll explain something a little bit later, but I need to understand what you interpret this notice of motion. What, to you as a clerk, what is a key vote? What does that mean?
All of council's votes are key. These are how you give instruction to administration. This is how you approve anything that administration is doing. So all of the recommendations of council are key.
So they're all key. So you'd post all the votes like they are now?
My position of clerk is neutral. Mm-hmm. Council makes recommendations, and we produce the minutes showing how the vote occurred and the recommendations were either carried or lost.
Okay. Well, if you were going to post votes rather than as they occur, how would you categorize the votes?
It would go to the motion only, and it would be who voted for and who voted against and the result of the vote.
So you couldn't put votes into categories, like whether they're for land use, for business, against business, all that kind of stuff, they would be just like they are now?
So it would be exactly as they are now because the Municipal Government Act prohibits me from making any record that has any sort of commentary.
Oh, okay. Good research so far. So one thing that came up, I think, actually was 3 years ago as a councillor. I had made an appointment with the Manning Center and talked to one of their researchers. I'm not sure if Councillor Farkas was working with them at the time, but the concern I had was that they had categorized some votes, and one of them was under spending. And I said, well, that vote you said that was spending was actually a vote to replace the street lights with LED lights, that we recover our money in less than 3 years, and that was a smart use of money. So what you're saying, so I understand, is no matter how we vote today, you can't change how they're categorized, and they'll just be as council votes.
So my office is prescribed to only produce the minutes without comment or commentary. So as council passes a motion and how you vote and whether it's lost or carried, that is what we would produce.
Okay. So looking at the motion, since you weren't consulted at all, what things that you could actually do out of those recommendations that would work under the MGA?
So the captioning you see here for the accessibility for our viewers from home is not kept, but it is indirectly kept because the video is kept for up to 4 years, and that is maintained in the record. So if you look at a council meeting, because it's only done at council, that closed captioning is there for 4 years. We could maintain the records longer because we currently are. The video archive is easier to maintain for us now. So we could probably keep it for the 8 years, I believe, is what Councillor Farkas has indicated.
Okay. So would
There would be little cost.
if we wanted it as a transcript though, would we have to pay someone to transcript the captioning that's already out there?
So in the short time I've had to look at this, I have not been able to go out to supply and get a request for any sort of these sort of services. So I don't know what the cost would be. Currently, that would be a service provided by a court reporter type. So I don't know what that service costs per hour.
So all the software, switch it over and all the time to do what's said, is that, have you done any costing on that at this time?
No, we just quickly looked at it and, determined 3 business units would have to respond to be able to do this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Keating, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in this notice of motion, were you consulted at all?
I think she answered that
Oh,
question
it's
already.
just like shooting fish out of barrel, Your Worship.
Don't be mean.
I don't know if we understand, but as a previous principal, Your Worship, looking at the title, Keeping Tabs on City Council, we got rid of hall monitors because they just led to too many difficulties. So maybe we can understand that at some point in time in this term, but I'm not quite sure if we will. But the closed captioning is not a official record, is that correct?
No, if you've actually followed the closed captioning, there are periods of times where they have no comment because the audio isn't working. There is a delay because this is actually someone in a different location recording what we say, and it's got about a 30-second lag.
Who's doing a great job, by the way. Thank you very much.
Oh,
We
yes,
never
thank you. Sorry.
Well, and I mean, because we're all talking on mics and different things, but we often see incorrect words up there.
Yes, so it is not it's a,
If we wanted it to be an official record, we would actually have to have and I forget the words, a stenographer or whoever here to actually do it. I did some research, Your Worship, unlike others, but we did.
You mean?
We phoned a Amicus reporting company, and we said, what would it cost? $200 per meeting for rent of equipment, $70 an hour for the individual at the time, plus $90 overtime if it went past the 8-hour day, the 9 to 5. Anyway, the cost of doing 1 year without going through the process of making these actual official, because not only do they have to do that, then they have to go back and charge you to actually make sure that they're correct. Well over $300,000 1 year, and that's council and committees. That's nothing of verifying that they're accurate. So the question is, who decides, Madam Clerk, what are exceptional public interest? Who decides that? That's my
So
point.
exceptional,
It does say by any member of council.
Does say by any member, so who decides?
well, in the notice of motion, it says any member.
Okay, so in other words, every vote could be decided by anyone that it's exceptional public interest, even though it's only of interest to one individual.
It only takes one member of council based
Correct.
on the notice
Okay.
of motion.
Retaining for 8 years, you did answer that one, because I remember the talk when we first started retaining them, and I think it was before your time when we actually, it was actually fairly considerable, but maybe that was the purchase of the hard costs at that
Oh,
time.
It had to do with the cost of storage back then,
Yeah.
which has gone through the
Changed.
floor now.
So
It's
that's good.
basically free now.
Okay. So we could upload it to YouTube. The university, or pardon me, the City of Toronto has done some things. 2.8 million uploads, and they get 100 to 500 views. Not a big uptake. Well, it doesn't, it's typically, they get few upwards of each post, they get 100 to 500 for each view. Some of them have reached 8,800. But 780 videos averaged 614 views. Not a big uptake, but let's spend the money. So the question is, and I lost my train of thought, unfortunately, after that back and forth. Oh, why incumbents? What do we do for the candidates who aren't?
In my position as returning officer, I would not recommend that one be approved because the neutrality of the election is paramount to the conduct of the election, and having more information about incumbents could be viewed as a favoritism towards incumbents. So I would, in my professional opinion, I would not recommend that one.
So it's my understanding presently today, after a council meeting or a committee, the agenda is put on the website. You can go to any item in that agenda and click, and it goes automatically to that video.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, so we don't have to go through thousands of pages to find it? Okay. In other words, Your Worship,
Your time is up, Councillor.
my time is up. This motion's time is up, Your Worship. It should all be done. Thank you.
Some actual real debate. Councillor Collier-Cart, please.
Yeah, how can I do better than that, Counselor? That was amazing. I may come to regret this amendment when it comes to notices of motion, but Madam Clerk, if you can put it up, I'd like it to be the very now therefore be it resolved. I'd like it to be the first statement injected in there. And you know what? We're in a time of deep, 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 deep austerity. And this really, it didn't come across to me as even a scoping report, Councillor. It was directing administration right away to start doing some of this stuff. So what the amendment says is that prior to council directing to undertake the work requested in this notice of motion, administration be requested to report back through the Priorities and Finance Committee on a financial analysis on the direct and indirect costs of undertaking the work requested, and B, work already underway to also look at work already underway by city clerks with regard to council voting practices, transcripts, and publication to avoid duplication and redundancy in the spending of taxpayer dollars. So, Madam Clerk, I know you're looking at a whole number of things that you've been given direction on before, and so this is really to ask for some of this preliminary work. And Councillor, I'm sure that you would appreciate them knowing what those hard numbers are. It doesn't need to come back to council, but at least if it goes through PFC. So I don't know if I have a seconder on this.
Hi, over here, the guy in the chair.
Councillor Farkas is seconding it.
I think that this is actually a referral motion. Because otherwise-
I didn't want a referral.
I know,
because
but
then
the problem
the
is that-
headlines hit that we're not
But
dealing
the problem
with
is that
this
if you
and we
pass,
refer everything.
the problem is if you pass this, you pass the stuff underneath it. And so if you're actually looking for a scoping report, then what you're doing is you're referring it to administration to bring that scoping report to PFC.
I didn't call it a scoping report.
Well, the
So-
financial analysis anyway.
So if that's your ruling,
Yeah.
then I guess I would refer it if Councillor Farkas is in agreement
Okay.
with that direction
Yep.
to know what this
You,
means.
you can do it exactly like that. So instead of the first two sentences or the first two lines, you just say, refer this to administration to report back through PFC on those two things.
Okay, thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Farkas. So I'll just go through the lights,
Okay.
but the debate is now officially on the referral motion. Councillor Farrell, please.
Thank you. Well, I'm not going to support the referral motion, and I won't be supporting the main motion. We're supposed to be cutting costs, cutting reports, and this asks for a significant body of work, and I don't see the value in it. What I see here is an attempt to politicize the City of Calgary website. And the beauty of the City of Calgary website, it is not political. It's pure information. It helps citizens understand their city better. And so that would be a perversion of the City of Calgary website to turn in. We have opportunity to have political websites. I have one. I think most members of council do. If you want to have your opinion in there, put it on your own website. Put it on your Facebook page, but don't waste city administration's time on that one. Ms. Kennedy is working to continuously improve our processes and reporting, and I expect that she will continue to do so. I won't be supporting either.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Gondek, please.
Your Worship, respectfully, I disagree that this should be a referral motion. I agreed with what Councillor Collier-Kurt was trying to do the first time. So may I ask respectfully if you would consider not making it a referral motion and going back to the original intent?
No. The challenge is that if you go back to the way Councillor Collier-Kurt did it and you vote and accept the motion as amended, it means you have actually accepted the other things. So you can't say, do a financial analysis of stuff we've already told you to do. The report would only come back with, this is how much it's going to cost to do what you already told us to do. So I think her intent was find out how much it costs before we decide to do it.
Yeah, so on
And
a
this is
point
the
of
easiest way to
procedure,
do that.
may I, on a
Yeah.
point of procedure, my worry in going this direction is that if this fails, then the rest of it stands. And it could go forward without any financial analysis at all or finding out what work is already underway. That's my worry.
I hear you. But that is the risk.
And
you
then I
take with
can't
the
put it
referral,
again because it's already been voted on.
unless you think of a different thing to do.
I mean, there.
And that is always, unfortunately, that is always the risk with a referral.
I
I
think
don't think you did.
I think it's possible to change the wording ever so slightly. It doesn't need to be a big change, where you could say, now therefore be it resolved that none of the progressive, therefore be it resolved, shall be pursued until this point.
It's just not very procedurally clean to do that, because when you vote on it, you're actually voting on the merits of the other ones.
Well, then what I would
So-
recommend is amending all of the other ones to say, if this review proceeds, then therefore be it resolved that this happens. So I would be happy to put in amendments for all of the
So,
other ones.
I understand what you're trying to do. What you just suggested is the definition of a referral. And really, I think we should just vote on it.
Okay, I'm not going to support that. I would put a countermeasure forward at whenever it's appropriate, if this fails in particular, that this particular notice of motion be sent directly to PFC for consideration.
That's exactly a referral.
Okay, you're asking this to go to administration and report back
Oh,
to
I see what you're
PFC.
saying. That's the difference.
That's not what I'm
Okay.
saying. I'm saying to make this go through PFC. So if this fails, I'll be recommending that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Dumong.
So, Ms. Kennedy, nobody contacted you on this notice of motion. We've established that. Are there other departments that you see being contacted or being involved in any aspects on this notice of motion?
Communications and corporate analytics and innovation, who are responsible for the Open City portal.
And do we have any knowledge if they were contacted in any way, shape, or form with regards to this notice of motion?
When my office reached out to them, they weren't aware of it, no.
So, Your Worship, I don't exactly know what I'm going to do here because I am getting increasingly frustrated with notices of motions that come to this council with absolutely not a shred of homework being done. I remember working on notices of motion with council colleagues for weeks, if not months, to come up with the right wording, to actually to explore, do the homework, talk to administration, and I feel it's absolutely imbecilic to be bringing notices of motion like this, just throw it against the wall. I have no idea what the costs and what the ramifications will be, but you know what? I'm going to look good for putting it out there, and if they vote it down, they're going to look bad for voting it down, regardless of the fact that there's no dollar values attached. We have no idea if this is a good idea or not, or whether we can even do any of these items. Your Worship, I'm not going to vote for the referral. I'm not going to vote for the notice of motion. If people can't do their homework, I am not going to be the one responsible, and I encourage the rest of council to not be responsible for somebody else's lack of work.
Thank you, Councillor Dumong. I'm next on the list. And so I will say that I think this is kind of a shame because I think there are a couple of things in this notice of motion that are well worth pursuing. For example, keeping the video recordings for longer than we keep them now. Under the open electronic voting and the open data that hopefully you'll be passing in the notice in the procedure bylaw soon, then that is coming anyway, and actually a notice of motion like this would be helpful in saying, here's what you should do with that data once we have it already. However, oh, sorry, you're going to jump in?
Just finish.
Okay. No, it never happens to me. So, the other thing is that one of the really nice things before you in a few minutes with the procedure bylaw will precisely fix this problem, because it means that notices of motion will go to PFC first, where hopefully PFC will do its job and make sure that the homework is done before the things hit the council floor.
Point of order on that note, won't change. No homework's going to be done. Just bring it to PFC and let somebody else do the work. That
wasn't a point of order in any way. It was a comment. It was a debate. In any case, so it's a shame for me. All of that said, I'm not going to support the referral for exactly this reason, which is why are we going to make them do a ton of work? I would prefer that council just say this is not something we're interested in right now. And then once we have the open data and the electronic voting in place, we can revisit and figure out the best ways to share this, which again is really a shame because I think there is something here that could have been good. And I'll remind the old folks on council, all 5 of us, that this might have been the first notice of motion I brought to council in 2010. And it was very specifically about how do we open up our voting records? How do we ensure that people have more access? That's why we keep the video archives now. That's why the minutes are, as I think Councillor Keating said, are set up by item. The one thing that I always was sad about is that we couldn't get to a place where someone could see how their councillor voted. But that's just not physically possible. It will be possible if you pass the changes to the procedure bylaw in some way or another. And by the way, I'm laughing because this conversation about the transcript and the closed captioning is an exact repeat of a conversation we had 8 years ago. Because when I said, well, we don't have to hire someone to do it, there's already closed captioning. And I was told it's not an official record. There are, sorry, closed captioner, you do such a good job, occasionally errors in it. And it can't be counted upon as an official record, so it's not a Hansard. So it's funny that we're having this conversation again. I do think technology has changed enough, especially on storage and other ways to access the information, that there's something interesting to talk about here, but I'm afraid that this notice of motion is not it. Councillor Farkas, on the referral.
Thank you, Your Worship. Instead, I'm actually going to rise on a point of privilege. Following one member of council's arguments, he described me as an asshole. Following, as part of one other council colleague, he described my actions as imbecilic. Council colleagues, you can argue against my ideas, but you cannot and you should not tear me down personally to make your points. You disrespect not just this chamber, but the Calgarians you're here to serve. If you do not like the ideas I am bringing forward on behalf of my constituents, vote against it. Make the best argument. Persuade your colleagues. Do so, but you do not have to tear me down in this chamber. I am here, a democratically elected representative, just as each and every single one of you are. I insist.
That question of privilege is indeed well taken. Thank you. Ms. Cole, you wanted to jump in on something?
I do, Your Worship. Councillor Farkas sent that notice of motion to some of us and indicated in that notice of motion that he sent, here's a draft, or here it is subject to further comments from administration, or I think it said colleagues. I just glanced at it quickly, but I want to be clear on this. Some of us received that notice of motion ahead of time.
Thanks, Ms. Cole. All right, Councillor Colley-Urquhart to close on the referral motion, please.
As some have indicated, there are some things in here that we've directed to have happen in the past, over the past 8 to 10 years. Some of this work is underway, some of it isn't. We don't have an update on it. I think it's worthy of a financial analysis to look at the direct and indirect costs. Councillor Farkas has seconded this, so he's open to us looking at this. So that's why I put it forward to have this work done. So I hope council can support this.
Thanks, Councillor Colley-Urquhart. On the referral motion on the screen then, on the referral motion on the screen, are we agreed? Any opposed? Call the roll, please.
Councillor Jamong.
Nope.
Councillor Farkas.
Yes.
Councillor Farrell.
No.
Councillor Gondik.
Yes.
Councillor Keating.
No.
Councillor Maglioka.
No.
Councillor Sutherland.
No.
Councillor Carra.
No.
Councillor Chahal.
Yes.
Councillor Chu.
Yes.
Councillor Colley-Urquhart.
Yes.
Councillor Davison.
Yes.
Mayor Nenshi.
No.
That is lost. 6 in favor and 7 against.
Thank you, Councillor Gondek. You want to try your other referral?
Yes, Your Worship. I think it would just be, if we could leave that old one up there, I can just edit that one if you don't mind. Thank you.
Ed.
Refer Councillor Farkas's proposed notice of motion to PFC for discussion, debate, and direction.
Do we have to do all three?
That's
All right.
generally what should be happening at committee. Because I think,
So you need a date, sorry?
well, it needs to go to the next
Mm,
next meeting of PFC, because if this had been done in the way I have suggested, it would have gone to the next meeting of PFC instead of coming to a meeting of council. But as Councillor Farkas has suggested, because our bylaw remains open, he also had the right to bring it here. So I would prefer for it to go to the next meeting of PFC so we can actually help bolster it with the information that it needs, like the financial analysis and reviewing the work that's already underway.
yeah. So you just write for debate, what was it, debate, discussion,
For
and
discussion,
direction?
debate, and direction.
And then you don't need A, B, and B there.
But you know what? I would like to leave those in. So after and direction, I think we need to say including but not limited to.
The only question is then who does the financial analysis?
It's for discussion, debate, and direction, including
Oh, I see.
but not limited to.
How to do this
Yeah.
stuff. Okay, yeah, that's fine. That makes sense. The only thing I'll caution is that the next meeting of PFC is on July 2nd.
Yep.
Starts at 1 o'clock.
Yep.
It's kind of a packed agenda. I don't mind going into the evening if we start at 1 o'clock, but we just may have to, unless you'd rather do it in the fall.
I mean, in fairness to Councillor Farkas, he brought it here because he has a right to bring it here. And if we are now saying it should go to committee instead, which is my personal preference, then I would like to do him the respect of having it at the
Okay,
next.
that's fair. That's fair. That's considerate. Okay.
If I may, as I'm standing here, I appreciated Councillor Farkas's point of privilege. I'd like to point out that the very same thing happened to me just last week at committee. I didn't say anything because I didn't have the ability. There was a member making a debate. However, the chair had to step in and intervene. And not only that, that particular member of committee left the meeting, went out to the media, and made disparaging remarks. No one's done anything about it. I'm not going to do anything about it because if someone lacks the maturity to understand, you don't act like that as an elected official, I'm not going to ask for an apology. But if we are experiencing these kinds of things in our council, what do we do about it? As the chair, I'd love to hear from you because this is becoming a theme.
So that is precisely why the question of privilege exists. It is why it is in the procedure bylaw. The chair should try and catch it as well. But if you feel that you have been misquoted or insulted, as opposed to I disagree with the debate that someone is having, then that is what the question of privilege is for. And people ought to use it.
Well, we're going to be having a lot of that then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Demong. That was seconded by Councillor Collier-Kurt, yeah? Okay.
On that eloquent debate by Councillor Gondek, I would like to offer an apology to my colleague in council here. I did get a little hot under the collar and used a word that I probably should not have, and for that I apologize.
Thank you, Councillor Demong. My debate, I like this actually, and thank you, Councillor Gondek. I was worried about the last one, and the reason I voted against it, and it was a one-vote differential, is because I didn't want administration to go through the cost and the work of doing it. But I'm very happy to have this conversation at PFC because I think there is some salvageable stuff in here that would be useful. So thank you very much for coming up with that. All right, on the recommendation before you then, are we agreed? Any opposed? Councillor Farrell is opposed. Councillor Keating, is that you? Councillor Keating and Farrell are opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, folks.